So, anyway, hi. This will be my review of Sword Chronicles. Or Sword Chronicle. Singular, I guess, is the correct way. Put that. Let me turn off the notifications on my phone so that it will not do that while I am talking. Anyways. Hi. So, my name is Jeremiah McCoy. I do these from time to time. And by these, I mean discussions and reviews related to certain game systems. Now, the game system I'm going to be talking about today is Sword Chronicle. Now, Sword Chronicle is an interesting game and has an interesting history to it. This game started as something else. The base card game system was designed for the Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game. This is by Green Ronin. And the Song of Ice and Fire game was, of course, based off of the Game of Thrones books that are written by George R. R. Martin. This system is written by Robert J. Schwab, who you may be familiar with from Shadow of the Demon Lord, if you're familiar with that. But it also has work from Malcolm Shepard, Steve Kennison, Joseph Character, and Jane Gates. So, at least that's what it says on the cover. Now, Song of Ice and Fire, when you're making a role-playing game to reflect a particular setting, it often has to have certain rules, conceits built in from the beginning. And to reflect the fiction that you're trying to simulate. Game of Thrones is a game about political maneuvering as much as it is about action and adventure. So this is not really a D&D clone type game. In a lot of ways, it is very counter to D&D. D&D is a power fantasy, to be sure, and so is this, but it is less well equipped to handle concepts like political maneuvering and so on. That said, you can do that in D&D, but it's just not built to handle it. It's something that you sort of do. This is a system that's designed to be able to reflect both, straight up combat and investigation stuff that you find in D&D and other fantasy role-playing games, but it is also designed to allow for social maneuvering, and the system reflects that. Now, the core system, the core die mechanics here, is roll and keep. In this case, it's you roll the number of dice equal to your attributes, and then you keep, you keep the number of dice equal to your attributes. And you say, well, that sounds the same. Some things give you bonus dice, and those bonus dice you roll as well, but you only keep what the attribute is. So, say you have an attribute at 3, but you have a skill, which is a specialization of that attribute, that is a plus 2 dice. So you'd roll 5 dice and keep 3. So that's pretty straightforward. The target numbers are, set by the game master to determine how hard it is for you to do whatever the thing is that you're doing. Now, once you get past the base die mechanics, and I should take a side road here. So Green Ronin also publishes Fantasy Age. Fantasy Age is more D&D-like in a lot of ways. And it is a roll 3d6 and hit a target number, but you also have stunts that you earn by rolling doubles of anything on those 3d6. So if you're getting this thinking that it is somehow tied to Fantasy Age, it's a very different die mechanics system to it. I just thought I should say that up front. Also, Fantasy Age, kind of like this one, started as a licensed game system for Dragon Age, and they separated it off to just be a Fantasy Age. Sword Chronicle is a separation off of Song of Ice and Fire to just have the game system so people could use it for whatever. Now, creating characters in this game is different than a lot of the games that you've ever seen. I will say that Green Ronin games in general have stuck to a lot of randomization in their character creation, which is fine. But some people lean more towards the point generation setups in games. This is different. You are a member of a noble house. That is the base assumption here. Now, I'll get to it in a minute, but there are some variations on that. But ultimately, that core concept is what you're building your character to fit into. You're part of a group. Now, in this case, you're part of a house, but you could, and some people do, write this up to be a part of a different kind of group. You just have to look around. Now, one thing that is different here from Song of Ice and Fire is all humans. It's all humans all the time. This is introducing ancestries, where your ancestry can be human, or it can be dwarven, or it can be elven, or it can be ogre, which is sort of fill in for ogres, trolls, orcs, what have you. That line of species of people. And being of different ancestries opens up different abilities to you that just come from being that ancestry. You also determine your age. And there is a table for rolling how old you are. But you don't have to use it, to be clear. And your age determines how many destiny points you have. Your amount of XP you start with. So if you're young, you don't start with a lot of XP, but you get a lot of destiny points. If you're older, you get lots of XP, but you don't have as much destiny points. The idea here is you have a lot more potential as a young person, so you get more destiny points, which allows special effects to occur, but you just don't have as much experience under your belt. And among the things that you need to determine at the beginning is what your status is as relates to where you fall in the rankings of your house. Again, that can be in a different kind of group, but that is what they're intending here. Now, I think that the interesting element here of dealing with age in quite that way is it gives you a choice, but you may not be clear until you read further into the book what kind of choice that is. Destiny points are used for a lot of special abilities, things that you can become good at, and so on, or spent for a particular effect. Whereas XP is you're going to allow you to buy skill levels, which is more directly useful It really balances. It does balance out, but generally speaking, somebody who is a bit older is just going to be more effective in standard interactions, like you're fighting bandits or something. That's certainly an element as well. Now, your different characters will also occupy different roles in a house or in a particular group, and it gives you some guidance on what abilities apply to that particular role to make you better at it. Again, you don't have to do them, but these are good guideposts to help you through that. You also determine your background. So, where did you come from? Stuff like that. You also have virtues and vices. Things that your virtues are the things that you're good at, and your vices are things that you struggle with. Then you assign your abilities. You're starting XP, your ability experience, into the ranks of skills. Your rank that you can hold is peak at adult. So basically you're at your prime. So mid-20s for most humans, I guess. You're at your physical and mental prime. And it goes downhill from there, but being a child, it's lower. So you're not able to go beyond a certain point. Beyond that, it also determines the amount of experience points that you can spend on those abilities. So your abilities are going to be the core things like fighting and knowledge and persuasion and so on, stealth, and those will be the thing that you determines your keep element. So if you've got a fighting of 3, you're rolling 3 dice and keeping 3. But if you also buy a specialty in it for 10 points, you get an extra bonus die. So you're rolling 4 dice and keeping 3. So it's all about the odds of you hitting the target number at that point. This all sounds pretty dry, and I apologize for that up front. I guess my point here is this is a very different kind of character creation than you may be used to in that regard. But it is pretty straightforward. You can build pretty much any kind of character concept you have in mind for a fantasy world. The destinies in this are where you get the weird stuff. You get qualities of being of a particular ancestry or being really good at certain things. Like there is an ancestry elf benefit that you can get, and you're spending destiny points to get that allows you to be like accurate with a bow, and you get an extra die or something like that. So that's what all of this stuff is. And it's there to sort of give you a wider range of abilities beyond just what your attributes are. And it includes things like magical abilities. So things that affect fate, things that actually provide you sorceress abilities, and so on. Now, here's the other thing that is really different here. Early on, you communally will be making a house. The house is where you are from. Now, it's a multi-stage process. There is a random element to it because you are spending points on different elements And the points are determined by a random die roll, where you can end up from anywhere from 1 to 46 points to spend. And you spend it on things like defense, influence, lands, and the level in which you have it talks about what these holdings are for the house, and helps sort of determine what their reach, what their capabilities are, which is important when you're doing political maneuvering. And it's definitely worth taking a look at. It is a communal affair, like I said. And then every month or so, you are doing tests to see where your house goes up and down. So it is an element of the game that is baked in from the beginning. You are manipulating the fates of your own house. Sometimes that means you go to war. Sometimes that means you're building a castle. Sometimes that means you're recruiting an alliance with a nearby other house. So that's the core design element. And if you watch Game of Thrones, once you get past the sex and violence elements, really those are the core elements that are going on there. It's about politics. It's about where your standing is in the world. And this game very much leans into that. The different heirs of the house, and you guys are either heirs or vassals of the house, get to influence that in a more direct fashion than just the core spending points and doing rolls every month. What you're doing each month is influencing the status of your house. And they give a lot of details about how to build a house, including how to build heraldry, which is kind of nice, I think. The heraldry is an element. Oh, yes. So I just saw your comment. Yeah. You told me that is what you initially built Orakesh in. I am not surprised. I mean, that was around the time we were playing together back then in this system. So, yeah, that makes sense. For those who may be watching later, my friend Brandis was in here and he made a comment that this is what he originally thought his campaign world in. It was for this game. And this is one of the things that I want to get into with this. If you're looking for a standard fantasy game, this is not it. It's got some very particular things. You have to really want to be telling the kind of story that this game is built for. They do have magic in this system. The magic in this system is much lower than what we're used to in D&D and other fantasy games. This is much more ritualistic, low power, high sacrifice magical abilities. Not unlike some of the magical things that you see in Game of Thrones, honestly. Where there's a high cost, a high difficulty, and the output is not always directly easy to see. Sometimes it is, but a lot of the times you can't necessarily tell that it worked. Or did somebody just get psyched out by that curse or something? Or people benefiting from the psychological benefits of having seen that ritual. It's not quite that vague, but it is certainly not super direct. It's not like, hey, I just summoned a demon and he's going to go fight my war for me. That really is not a part of what's going on here. But the magic is flavorful, is rich and interesting, but it is not D&D by any stretch of the imagination. Um, yeah, Orkesh, my friend Brandis's Campaign World, which he's written about on occasion on is it brandisstoddard.com, I think, these days. He's the harbinger of doom. Um, and he's up on Twitter if you want to give him a follow. Uh, yeah, the game right now is very much a city adventure kind of hub, but the bones of what of this being a much more gritty politics, social maneuvering kind of game does look like it's there. So yeah, I can see it. I always when you told us, you know, what about a month back that was your goal. No, not at all, man. I don't mind. Uh, Interacting with people on the stream is part of the process. It's what you want. So, um, but yeah, the goal with of it being more sort of urban and political was obvious. It looked like it, maybe house warfare might have been more of a thing. From your stories of the home game before I joined, it sounded like it. So, yeah, I didn't find that terribly surprising. Um, it would be hard to imagine it as this system now. The magic system is vastly different. And we get a little magical at times. Um, Another thing that I think is different in this game than a lot of people are used to is so in D&D, if I were to make a skill challenge or what have you, an attribute check, what have you, to try and influence a PC, there's only so much I could go for. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it definitely needs a higher magic system for you to do anything like what we've been doing. But yeah, anyways, skill does not normally allow you in most fantasy games, honestly, to take care to lose control of your PC over much. You'll sometimes run into a fear effect or something like that makes you run away, or you run into an outright charm effect that makes you do something. But very rarely do most games have a skill system that allows you to be influenced into doing what somebody wants just with a skill check. This game absolutely does that. And you need to know that up front because some people are not going to be comfortable with that loss of volition with their character. It is part of the compromise. You can do that to other NPCs as well. It's just saying, yeah, if you can do it to NPCs, you can do it to a PC. And it costs you something to try and resist those skills that make you do things. And, it's not like they're going to convince you to fall on your sword exactly, but they can maneuver you into putting yourself in a politically disadvantageous system to their benefit. So, yeah, like real politics, honestly. Um, but yeah, this is a thing that takes some getting used to. For a lot of people might be coming from D&D, Pathfinder, even Fantasy Age or something like that, it is a hard pill to swallow to a certain extent. But it is very much part of the genre that this game was established to to simulate. That people acting against their own interests because they've been manipulated is very much a part of things. So the system is designed to allow that to happen. You have defenses, just like you have combat defenses. In fact, it resolves in a lot of the same ways that combat resolves. But yeah, that's definitely an element. I don't mind it, but I don't mind it because I know going in. I know that there are some people who will mind it if they don't know going in. So if you're going to be running this game, make sure you clear that up for your players up front, because they definitely will not enjoy the surprise if they're not expecting it. Now, they have regular combat as well. It is using that die mechanic that I described at the beginning. Roll the attribute plus bonus dice, and then you keep the attribute dice to meet a target number. The combat is you have certain combat defenses. The opponent's trying to hit your combat defenses, and as you take damage, it does affect you and gives you certain qualities that makes it harder for you to continue. It's pretty straightforward. It's not a deep combat system, which honestly, that's not the point of the game. So having a deep combat system wouldn't make sense for this game. They have enough that you can have an interesting fight, but if you're looking for a lot of system depth on combat, this isn't it. And that's by design. They also have a warfare system. So this is what it sounds like on the tin. You guys are already nobles of a house. Sometimes houses go to war, and you need mass combat systems to handle this. You are issuing orders to different troops, activating units, going into battle. It is a relatively complex system. I think one of the things that we experienced when we tried to run mass combat in the game we played in, Brandis and I, back in the day, was it bogged down a little bit. That session was going to be nothing but that combat. There's no real quick way to run a mass combat. And that's maybe okay. Honestly. In the sample fiction that you can pull from, having an episode of Game of Thrones where it's nothing but a single battle is the norm. So having an entire session, maybe even two, dedicated to a single battle is not out of the realm of possibility, but it can feel a little less exciting, I guess. If there's any element of this game that maybe I wish there was another way to work it, I'm not certain what that other way to work it is. It would be this section. It's well done for what it is, but yeah, it will bog down a session. You just need to accept it up front. This is going to be a session, possibly two, of you doing nothing but mass combat. And that can feel a little detached. My recommendation to you for making it feel less detached is be very descriptive about everything that you do. Like, you do the test and then get flowery with it and encourage the players to get flowery with their description of what's going on, because it's kind of a mess. Otherwise, it's I'm doing this test and this test and this test and this test. Pardon me. I've been talking for a bit. So yeah, otherwise it's just a long series of tests, and that can be a little off-putting. But it is an effectively designed system. I will say that it does do what it says it's doing. It needs more flavor from the game masters and players to keep it interesting. So I would encourage people to get into describing what's happening, because otherwise it can be a little dry. Um, I will also wrap this book up by saying that they have included a default setting. It's not much of a default setting. The world of Anarum, the Shattered Era. It is sort of a grim, dark fantasy setting with some elements to it. But it is, the world has, the big difference here is that the world has some fantasy races in its history and some higher magic elements in its history that maybe weren't as clear on, say, Game of Thrones' A Song of Ice and Fire. I don't think that this is intended to be a full on, this game is about this setting, as much as, we know you're going to want something to start in, so we'll give you a setting that this game would fit. And so the Shattered Era is very much that. It's reasonably well written. They have some nice little touches, some of the dwarven houses and elven houses, and how they interact. Like I said, it's not a lot of setting material. But then again, you don't get a lot of setting material in the Player's Handbook for D&D either. So bear that in mind. You have, beyond that, this just some basic charts and character sheets at the end. I think this is a game for people who really want to change the conversation at the table about their fantasy game. Instead of having it just be dungeons and combats and so on, this is a game where you are, in fact, managing something and doing things that are not combat. In fact, while the other things are given the same system weight as combat, which is maybe different from a lot of what the D&D players are going to be used to. I enjoyed the hell out of the game that we played back in the day. I worked at a company called Icarus Studios on a game called Fallen Earth, and one of the people who worked there, Lee Hammock, was also on the side writing for this game. Well, for Song of Ice and Fire, specifically. And he's like, hey, I want to start up a game. So I and some friends joined his game, and it was amazing. It's possibly my favorite tabletop role-playing experience ever. It was just the right players playing the right game at the right time. And so I have very warm feelings towards this game. I mentioned some of the knocks on it that made it maybe not ideal for everybody, but I mentioned those just to be honest up front. I like this game. I have enjoyed playing this game, and I enjoyed playing it with some really cool people. And I think everybody could do with, a really well-designed game that does more than just fighting. I think everybody has a desire to see how that looks. And this game does that. It does it in a way that is different than some of the other systems I've seen handle it, like Fate or so on. This is still crunchy enough that it is familiar to people who are used to, say, D&D or Pathfinder. But it is doing the system in such a way that combat is not the only thing that you do. And I find that really interesting and compelling. I also think that it has a lot of potential. I'm going to show off something here. This was published under the Chronicle System Guild. So Chronicle has a community guideline, a community publishing thing, kind of like DM's Guild, but for let me see. Did it not show up? Is it not showing on the screen? I thought I had. I guess not. Let me see what I can do about fixing that. Give me a sec here. Yeah. Oh well. It's giving me a hard time showing it to you, and I apologize. So, I recommend you go check out the Sword Chronicle Guild. I can just talk about it. I'll figure out why I had technical problems later. Sword Chronicles has a guild, kind of like DM's Guild, where people can publish their own community-created content under a license, and and sell it on Drive-Thru RPG. And the Chronicle Guild has already got a number of products up there, showing some of the range that this game can do. One of which was one that just showed how to do space combat. So the core elements of this can be adapted to a lot of things, including science fiction if you want. I've thought about doing a science fiction one where I have instead of a noble house, I have the crew of a ship. And you determine the resources of that ship as you go through a bunch of space empires. That's pretty cool, I think. Anyway, that's my own thing. But the game would support that model because the core mechanics are relatively straightforward. I have a target number. I combine skill, ability and specialization. Roll those dice, keep the ability, so instead of some horsemanship skills, I have some spaceship skills. There's already actually some skills related to like firearms and such in here. Just turn that up to power weapons and laser beams, and you're fine. It is a system that would allow for that. So start thinking of those terms. You could do almost a Star Trek style crew this way, where you design the ship and your crew, and instead of competing for rank in like an empire or something, your ship is discovering new worlds and new experiences. That's absolutely within the realm of possibility. I like the potential of this game. I think you should check it out. It's currently on DM's Guild, or not DM's Guild, on Drive-Thru RPG. And I will include a link when I put this up on YouTube to where you can get it. But it's a great little system. The PDF is actually not that much. It is surprisingly little. Let me pull it up here so I can see what the current price is. This is me being all professional and stuff. $19.95. So yeah, for $20, that's pretty good. So you get the complete system, plus it is the core system to a bunch of other stuff that you can buy through the drive-through RPG, published under their community stuff. And I look forward to seeing what other people come up with. I'm actually actively sort of side project kind of working on something right now. So I want to see what other people come up with. Do you think you could do something with the sort of design a house model that's interesting? Is there a different setting that you would like to do? Post-apoc. Maybe you want to make a Western game. You could do a Western game where everybody is working on the same ranch, and you're holdings of the ranch, and you're trying to maintain your power against other ranchers, cattle rustlers, and homesteaders who are coming into the region to confine it. There's a bunch of stories you could do with this game. Just my thinking, though. I hope you enjoyed this. Did anybody? Well, I think the only viewer I had was Brandis. But, no, I've got 3 viewers. Oh, okay. Anybody have any questions? There's a delay. So I'm just going to talk like I'm not actually just waiting to see if the delay catches up. Which, very professional of me. I think it's very professional of me. Thanks, man. Thank you, Brandis. I appreciate it. I will probably do this again next week. And I think I will probably cover Pathfinder 2. So, if the Intrigue has changed at all from... so I took a look at it, and I looked at Song of Ice and Fire. Honestly, the Intrigue rules are almost the same. Like, I think they tweaked a couple of little things, but not much. I know that they tweaked the combat so that armor was no longer a negative. It didn't reduce your ability to do some things, to wear armor. That was one of the things I noticed when I was looking through it. But beyond that, no, I didn't see a whole lot of changes to the influence rules. This sorcery element does affect it, though, because some of the sorcery abilities affect some of the intrigue interactions. So you would need to read the sorcery spells. They are, because, like I said, they're subtle effects and less direct. And, there are things that give blessings to people. There are things that sanctify spaces, things that basically kind of like curses and boons. And those can affect your intrigue rolls. So that's worth looking at. The sorcery rules set, I think, was released for Song of Ice and Fire before this was published as a separate thing that you could download. And they have integrated it into the core system now. The intrigue core rules are pretty much the same. They just added some interesting complications due to the magic. Let me think. I can't think of anything that changed dramatically. I definitely... I liked what I heard from the people who produced this. They did a thing at Gen Con online, a talk, and I tuned into that, and it was good. Like, they seemed to have a vision of what they wanted to do with it. They were excited to see what people put out. And I'm anxious to see how that side of things goes forward. The community generated content. I'd be interested to see if anybody actually generates campaign worlds. Or maybe just flesh out the campaign world that they've generated. Like, we're going to take elements of that and just build it up or something. I'm interested to see what people do with it. So, anyway. I have been on almost an hour. And I think I'm going to wrap up now. Thank you for showing up. And, among other things, helping me with my technical difficulties, Brandis. I appreciate it. Like I said, I'm going to try and do this again next week with talk about Pathfinder 2. And I hope to get into a weekly place of doing this. My life has been as complicated as everybody else's has been this year, but I want to do that. So hopefully that will be the case. Until then, I think I am going to wrap things up. Thanks for stepping on over and giving it a look and putting up with my technical difficulties. And I guess I'll talk to you later. Bye.